one global crisis to another. Can you give us some insight on the collapse of SVB? Do you think that this aspect of the financial crisis will be utilized to promote the use of CBDCs to ensure that centralized currencies are placed in the hands of existing establishment structures?
Yes, absolutely. My view on the collapse of SVB and also subsequently Signature Bank of New York and previously Silvergate Bank was that these were targeted attacks on banks that were heavily into the crypto world. This was a way to take out crypto. And now crypto doesn't know where to go. They need banks for on-ramping and off-ramping crypto to convert dollars or euros to crypto, or to vice versa, sell your crypto for euros or dollars. And these three banks, Signature Bank and Silvergate Bank, were they were the two biggest crypto banks, and SVB was getting into it. And suddenly these three banks are taken down. There was definitely some deregulation that happened, but the deregulation actually didn't have a lot to do with it. These banks were solvent banks. They did not have bad assets like non-performing mortgage loans, for example, where people were defaulting. They'd bought treasury bonds from the government when the government told them to buy those treasury bonds in order to reduce inflation. And then those banks were taken down. And when you look at what happened with Credit Suisse just yesterday, and how the Swiss central bank came forward and said, don't worry, we've got this in case something were to happen, that is the role of the central banks. That is what their purpose is to help go in there and ensure that a solvent bank has liquidity when there's a potential run on that bank. That's exactly what the Swiss central bank just did for Credit Suisse, and yet the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank was unwilling to do that for these three banks. But then suddenly 3 days later, if they just would have implemented the rule that they have now, 3 days later, those three solvent banks would have remained in business. You can take a bank down when a bank is insolvent, but to take a solvent bank down, that's purposeful. They whisked in, SVB had a buyer, they rejected that buyer. That would have saved SVB. Signature Bank was solvent by the time they showed up to seize it. Same thing with Silvergate. Silvergate was told to prepay loans that they weren't needing to prepay in advance. Why would they need to do that? That was taking out their liquidity. This was a targeted attack on cryptocurrency. That's exactly what this was. That's why we're not going to see very many other banks collapsing anytime soon. They will eventually. There's going to be some collateral damage, but ultimately, this was targeted on these three banks. It was intended to take out crypto because the Federal Reserve has been very transparent and open about wanting to roll out central bank digital currency. They can't do it when there's alternative cryptos out there. They even have this on their website. They're very open about it. They say that the rollout of CBDCs will help protect the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. They flat out say it on their website. They're wanting to do this. They've just implemented a 12-week pilot program to see how CBDCs do. So we're seeing the march towards this central bank digital currency where individuals like you and I will have bank accounts essentially with the central bank, with the Federal Reserve. That's where our money will be held. They'll be able to then surveil us. They even say on their website that it would help with combating criminals, because of the transparency of where their transactions are going. So they're wanting to roll out the central bank digital currency. They're wanting people to want it. So part of these collapsings of these banks is also to get people to say, oh my gosh, you're telling me when I put my money that I earned into a bank account and I've made no risky investments, the only thing I did was open a bank account, and now you're telling me I might lose all of my money, claiming it's somehow my fault I opened up a bank account. They're wanting you to feel that fear, so that then you say, well, then what's the only thing? How can I keep my money safe? Well, you'll keep it safe if it's directly with the Federal Reserve. That is the only place. So that's what they want to do. They're wanting to roll out these CBDCs, and they're wanting you to want it. If you can control the money, you can control the people. That's what they're doing.
Kim, that's such an extraordinary and evolved perspective, and so in keeping with one of the themes of today's show, how the escalation of fear ultimately causes us to submit to further authority. I hadn't noticed that potential in that story at all. Not that I would. I'm not a financial expert by any means.